Ebenezer Upton and his merry Uptonites. It's just not possible to not discuss them. It's like a slow motion train wreck. And particularly today I wanted to look at the question why the Raspberry Pi Pico W, which I recently unboxed as per here, does not have Bluetooth support, even though the datasheet of the Infineon wireless module, which they actually use, promises Bluetooth support. This is a video about the Bluetooth SIG. So, for legal reasons, we have to make a little declaration, which you can also skip. My company, myself, and none of my financial investments have any kind of relationship to the Bluetooth SIG. We've never signed a licensing contract with them, and we are not allowed to speak about them in any way. Anything which I'm saying here is purely a speculation, which is not endorsed in any way by the Bluetooth SIG. And of course, I have no licenses to their trademarks whatsoever. However, this video is being recorded in Central Europe, where we have strong fair usage rights for trademarks, which I'm using in a purely descriptive fashion. In order to get a clearer picture of what we are actually looking at, here we have the datasheet of the wireless module. Here it still says Cypress, but as you know, Cypress has been bought some time ago by Infineon. And here on this datasheet, which is surprisingly detailed for a wireless unit, we see here the main overview. And we see here the wireless module. Here we see all of this coexistence stuff. And here we see the host side. And the interesting thing, if we look at this here, is that we see there is separately the Wi-Fi interface and the Bluetooth interface. And furthermore, in addition to these pins here, which are mainly just interrupt generators and basically nobody cares about them much, we see one thing here which says UART. And this, I believe, is the smoking gun as to why all of the claims about, oh, just hack it, and also, oh, they didn't want to pay the SIG are wrong. We can also get it directly from the horse's mouth. Here you see in the front of the datasheet, they say interface support is the HCI using the high-speed UART. And at this point, we are basically touching a part of the Bluetooth specification, namely the interface between the host and between the module is specified in this HCI interface, which is a specification by the Bluetooth SIG and which you should obey, also in your own interest, because if you obey it, the drivers in the various real-time operating systems will work with you directly. And so basically we have the issue. On the one hand, we have the WLAN interface, and on the other hand, the Bluetooth interface. And now, to go more into detail, we need the schematics. And you see they are available as part of the datasheet, but you have to flip over the PDF so that you can look at it comfortably. And now I'm going to zoom in a little bit to find the for us relevant part, which incidentally is on the second page. And you see here that Cypress module, they break it up into multiple subunits. This here is mainly the power supply, whereas this here is the actual logic block. And now we are going to zoom in more into the logic block. And we see here the SDIO connection, and we see here we have the various connections to the processor. And then here we see all the Bluetooth pins, and we see from the X that they are open. So most of the interface which theoretically and practically would be required for efficient communication with this module is not even connected to the RP2040 microcontroller. And yes, I have to make a remark here. Here in the middle we see the whole RP2040 and we see that it is a QFN which has just 56 pins. And if you take off all the various pins for the bootloader, for this, for power supply, for that, then the situation is this, that there simply were not enough GPIO pins to go around. This, of course, is a disadvantage of the QFN housing which was selected. In theory, the Raspberry Pi Foundation could do what, for example, GigaDevice do and offer multiple different housings. But in the case of the Raspberry Pi Foundation, I think they simply don't care enough about the end users to be willing to offer another housing, because that would, of course, increase their costs. And now to ask the theoretic questions, what could be done? I mean, obviously, here we have all of these GPIO pins. So in theory, one could run a wire from here, but the problem is that this module, I don't see anywhere where one could dock. So this is not a very plausible approach. And in theory, also, of course, one could modify the software inside of this module as to basically allow communication between the Bluetooth using the Wi-Fi link. But realistically, knowing Infineon and also knowing just how complicated these internal stacks are, I don't think that this is something that anybody inside of the company is even willing to do, and outside of the company I don't think they are able to do it, because these stacks are always very, very highly proprietary technology. So the software approach, I think, is very, very unlikely, and a hardware approach also is unlikely. From my point of view, the smartest way would be to basically add a few extra pins, and then maybe the user can make a bridge to select whether he prefers the GPIO and the UART or whether he prefers the Bluetooth transmission capability. Or, of course, there are already external modules which plug in and which basically have an external Bluetooth radar. Please, don't get me wrong. My company probably sells more Orange Pis in an industrial application than many others. So I am not a fan of the Uptonites by any way. And I've also been very, very critical of the Bluetooth SIG in the past. In fact, I've been so critical that they once intervened at the sponsor and had me edit slides during a presentation. But be that as it may, let us clearly state that from a technical point of view, the situation is this, that the decision to put the RP2040 into a QFN 56 case practically boxed the Uptonites into a tight box. And then, by being forced to keep compatibility between the Pico and the Pico W, basically this put the lid and the bottom onto the tight box. So this is one case where just the realities of semiconductor packaging have made it impossible to offer this feature, and hacking it in afterwards at a reasonable cost. I'm not saying that if an elite hacking society, like if the KGB or the North Korean Department for Cyber Security or the NSA want to do it, probably they can do it. But for an average little individual, or maybe 5 or 6 people, a motley little gang, There is just no way to do it economically, especially because you've got things like the ESP32 or you've got things like the Giga device W515, and it just makes no sense to dick around with this module if others are just cheaper. So with this, I wanted to thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you again soon on this channel. Thank you.